Hello and welcome to 1 Inch Pie Scary podcast on this, the 1st of May. I have to admit, historically, it's not been my favorite day. We do celebrate May Day though, and that's always fun for the family, a little tradition we do. But in general, May kind of heralds the month of terror for me because I had a lot of triggers associated with it, and it's been sort of something that's even the thought of May has really brought on a lot of anxiety for me in the past. Um, we'll see how this one goes. I never say never anymore, but I do think it's fitting, since I have spoken to so many people who feel this way right now, who are having real struggles right now, that this month is also has been designated as Mental Health Awareness Month. And so what I want to talk about today is delicate because it doesn't fit quite into the real the mission of mental health awareness, which is to take away the stigma of any struggles with mental health. We shouldn't be adding to those excruciating difficulties a stigma where people just don't feel like they can talk about it. And as we know, nothing thrives in the dark except for bad things, mold and other, unsavory things. And in order for people to heal and get the help that they need, they really do need to be able to verbalize what's going on, and then of course to ask for help. And I've been on a kind of kick lately, and I'm not alone, I know that, in talking about the importance of vulnerability. And that's kind of a buzzword lately. I know that Dr. Brene Brown has hit Netflix, and people are really loving her special. I haven't watched it yet, and I know that her work is very, very much about shame and vulnerability, and the importance of combating shame with using the gift of vulnerability, really. And so I know that that's a big buzzword in general. And for me, it's just been something that has been an ongoing theme as I've worked through my PTSD, as I've addressed my abuse in a very public way and discovered the difficulties that the secondary abuse, the keeping the victim silenced and sort of the gaslighting of the victim, I've realized the damage that can do, and I've really tried to address that too, both personally and then as I learned about it in real time, sharing it with others, in the hope that I could help them too. And so this is sort of a very uncomfortable area, gray area for me to cover. It's not natural, and it's not something that I talk about because I'm so inclined to be vulnerable and to encourage vulnerability and to encourage people to reach out for help. And so I want to be very clear that I'm in no way changing that message, and that I'm in no way saying that, trying to instill any kind of concept anywhere close to that in terms of shame or not sharing or not asking for help. But because I have done so much in recent times, and just in general, my whole sort of like shtick has been, we've got to talk about this and we've got to ask for help and there's no shame and we're all in this together. I do think that it's responsible and necessary to also address the other side of the coin when that doesn't go well. When asking for help feels like it's made everything worse. Now, how can that possibly be? Ask anybody who's suffered from mental illness and has very courageously, very maybe tentatively reached out and not received the kind of help or feedback that they anticipated, they hoped for, or they needed. It is a really terrible thing. It feels awful. It feels, like all your worst fears have been realized. It's the perfect storm. It's the sum of all fears. It's all the things. It's bad. It's bad news. So I want to tell you that it's happened to me, and I've survived. And I'm still really, really inclined to be vulnerable and to think that being too vulnerable is better than being not vulnerable at all. So I want to clarify that. I also want to say there is no shame. There is no shame and there's nothing wrong. Asking for help is always right. So let's stipulate that as clearly and as emphatically as I possibly can. Asking for help is always the right thing to do. If you need help, asking for help is the best thing you can do. It's the most courageous thing you can do. It's the wisest and strongest thing you can do. Okay, so that, let's put all that aside. So lest you doubt, asking for help is always the right thing to do. I want to help you to be strategic in your vulnerability through my hard-won wisdom, and it's still growing in this department. I have been, like I said, I am wired for vulnerability, and that might surprise people because I kept this terrible, terrible secret my whole childhood, and but I think the fact that I was a sort of vulnerable, open book kind of person actually made me more of a target in the first place for the abuse I suffered. So in that way, I mean, I'm very trusting. I'm inclined to think that people are good at heart and that everybody is on the same page as I am and wants to help. And you know what? Most people do. Very few people don't want to help, and perhaps just as many aren't necessarily equipped to help you in your worst crises, and that is the bad, sad news. Okay, I hate to say it, and it's almost frightening for me to hear myself say it, but it is. We're all doing the best we can, and nobody is fully equipped to solve your situation, right? We are all limping through life together. We're dragging each other along. And so the first thing I want to say is that we're all trying our best. Well, not all of us, but most of us are just really, really trying our best. And so this is the next thing I want to cover. If people have not met your expectations in terms of helping you, that does not mean you were wrong in asking them for help. And it doesn't mean that they are bad people or that they aren't really your true friends or that they don't care or that you made a mistake in asking for help. It doesn't mean any of those things. It absolutely emphatically doesn't. It just means that there are so many reasons why some things that we bring in terms of mental health crises to a lay person just cannot be handled. And honestly, even therapists will screw up because they too are human. So we need to, and I think that should be reassuring in some ways, is that, you know, when we're struggling with mental health problems, we are inclined to take it all on us. This is all our fault. Everything that happens is our fault. The way it was received, maybe not in a good way, is also our fault. People don't love us, or we're asking too much, or what have you. That neither of these things are true. People, you know, whoever you took it to and they couldn't help you doesn't mean they're bad, and you're not bad, and you know, none of this. It's just, it is a lot, and we don't tend to take you know, a heart attack to our, you know, local clerk at Rite Aid and say, you know, could you fix the situation? You seem like a warm, kind, caring, empathic person. You always ask me how my day's going, and here I am with this heart attack, so please sort it out. And we don't, you know, take it to our best friend, and we don't take it to our spouse or a child either. We take it to a professional. First prize is a professional, right? If you really need help, try to seek out professional help. If you're in a true crisis, now of course we know what a struggle that is, especially in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries, but we do very, very poorly here with healthcare. And I don't mind saying so because reform has to happen, especially with mental health. But failing which, and you know what, I have a wonderful therapist. I'm very, very fortunate to have one, and sometimes she's not available, and once or twice she's just you know, really dropped the ball in that way in my mind, but she was being a human with boundaries, in fact. And she didn't drop the ball at all. She just wasn't available to me. So, you know, even a therapist, like I was saying, is a human being. What I want to tell you is that failing having on hand, you know, in an emergency, and if it's a true emergency, just go to the hospital. It's not the worst thing that can happen. I have plenty of friends who have gone and checked themselves in, and I'm so impressed by that wisdom and that courage and that self-care and that maturity to say, I need help and I need it now, and I'm going to do this. I think that's a remarkable thing to do, and there should be no stigma whatsoever attached to that. If it's not a situation where it's a crisis that you feel unsafe, or that you just, you know, really can't be alone anymore, you don't even have to be to that point. You just feel that you're just at your wit's end, and you're just sort of at a mid-level or low-level crisis. Here are some things that the information that I've gathered for myself through years of struggle and sharing and vulnerability, which I do not regret, in terms of, you know, vulnerability in and of itself. But first of all, choose your person wisely. Okay, so we all have people in our lives who we love and like, and we might have a bunch of friends. And there are some friends who are good for some things, but not for other things. And I think a mistake a lot of people make, particularly empaths like myself and people who are wired for anxiety or depression or particularly sensitive, is that they want to make a helper out of everybody, because they are inclined to be helpers. So they just sort of like, they keep trying with a friend who is not that kind of friend for whatever reason. Who cares? It doesn't matter why they're not that kind of friend. They're a great friend for if you want to go shopping, or they're an amazing friend for having fun with, or they're just hilarious and delightful, or they're really intelligent, or they're great for asking advice in business, or what are all those things. But not everybody is there for you when you are ready to get vulnerable, and it doesn't matter why. It just is. So don't, you know, listen to your instincts, because usually you're going to have a little alarm bell when you're approaching somebody that you know isn't really up to that particular task. Don't keep trying. I've done this. It's hard on them and you, and it ends badly. So listen to your instincts. The instinct to ask for help is what? Always right, never wrong. Who to ask for help? Listen to your instincts. If it's saying not this person, especially if you've tried before and failed, or it hasn't gone particularly well, don't keep trying. We can be inclined to do that. It's just a bad idea. So listen to your instincts and go to somebody who you know is safe and kind, even if they're not necessarily an expert in help. They just kind of have a nurturing way about them. They're a stabilizing, grounding kind of human. If you're not in the mood to laugh at yourself at that moment and you know they're a jokester, don't go to a jokester. Don't go to a friend who's never experienced anything like this before, or doesn't seem to have the capability to be empathic with it. You know, just be smart about it. I know you can do that. All right, the next thing to do is, once you found a person that you know or you are inclined to believe is going to be sort of a safe person to tell your problems to, or to ground you, or to just be a touch point before you, you know, just sort of spiral down into complete despair or what have you. It's really a great idea, especially if there's somebody you've you know, sort of made a habit of doing this with, is to ask them if they have the emotional space, if they have the time or the energy at that moment, because you have got some really heavy shit to lay on them. And I just, you know what? Not everybody at every moment is up for it. I am not even up for it with my children every day, right? I love them more than life. I would do anything for them. There have been moments when I'm so saturated with my own overstimulation, my own triggers, my own despair, that I have to maybe stall or deflect them to my husband. It doesn't happen often, because usually that mother instinct kind of kicks in and overrides whatever I've got going on. But sometimes I know I'm just not going to be my best self, and I want them to have the best of the best, right? So there is no shame or it doesn't mean that your friend's not your friend if they say no. I just don't, right? I am so swamped. I have had moments of that, and I love my friend just as much as I ever did, and I want so desperately to help them, and I just can't. It's the kind and wise thing to do, because you're giving them the opportunity to go, I can't. I just don't have it. I'm so glad you asked, because I want to help you to find somebody who does, or I just can't do it, but it's not you, baby, it's me. Um, and then you know that it's not, you don't have to second guess. If they're abrupt with you, you don't have to be like, okay, I knew that was the wrong thing to do. I know I'm just an idiot. I know that I deserve to feel this way, and that person never even really liked me in the first place. And all that rumination that happens when you are vulnerable or you are struggling with a mental health sort of flare up. It's so smart to start off by going, look, I got some heavy stuff. Do you have the space? Do you have the time? Do you have the energy? And if they were to be like, I don't, I am so overwhelmed right now, and I want you, you're not going to spend all that energy. It's not going to add to your terrible burden later on when you're ruminating at why they acted so strangely. And maybe they, if you say, I just feel like I'm the worst person, and they kind of blow you off, you might go, well, they agree that I'm the worst person. I am the worst person. Oh my hell. Okay, so you don't want to do that. You don't want to have that. You don't want to have that, those hang-ups in addition to everything else you brought to them. So that's a really good tactic that I've learned way too late in life, but I'm going to employ so much more from now on. The next thing is be specific. Be really specific and clear about what it is that you need. Okay, so I know this sounds so much work when you're already just like, I can't, like I'm spinning out, I'm freaking out. And like I've said again, professionals, even if you don't have one hired, you can always go to the emergency room if it's just too much. You can't say anything more than, I'm freaking out, I cannot. But if you go to a person and go, look, I'm spinning, I'm freaking, and I'm feeling really insecure about myself right now. I need reassurance. I need to hear that everything's going to be okay. You know what? Your friend who might be inclined to be a jokester before, or like blow you off, or just be like, everything's good, oh, come on, stop your whining, let's go shopping instead. If you say, I need really to hear right now that I'm not a terrible mom, or I'm not a terrible person, or I'm not a terrible wife, I really need to hear that everything's going to be okay. If they are any kind of friend at all, if they're not a monster, they're going to tell you that. They are going to respond and be like, everything is going to be okay. And you know what? It is. It is. I'm going to tell you right now that it is going to be okay. I was telling one of my children yesterday that I've survived 43 years worth of my worst days, my most impossible days, the days that I thought that everything couldn't possibly be all right. And you know what? There have been some real doozies in there. And by all accounts, those days, anybody else looking at them might have thought, shit, it's definitely not going to be all right. And they always were. And I kind of regret all the angst, because it turned out, it just always does turn out okay. But more on that later. But if that's what you want to hear, or if you want to hear, look, I really need to hear, or I just really need some guidance, I really need some encouragement to make an appointment with a professional, or to go to a hospital, or to get on meds, I need to hear this from you. Or that's true vulnerability, and I know it's going two steps further than some people are anywhere inclined to go, but it's so helpful. It's so helpful to the person who wants to help you, and it's very helpful to you too, because often we just need to hear what we already know. More often than not, that's what we need to do. And that's why, if you go to a therapist, they're very I certainly do most of the talking in my sessions. They're not inclined to tell you specifics on what you should do. They're inclined to guide you to figure it out for yourself, and to verbalize it, and to follow through. So we often know what it is we need to hear. So it's also a very grounding exercise to think about, what is it though that I need to hear? Because then you're kind of working through, what is going on with me? And that is a really good self-awareness exercise that can be very, very grounding and very helpful. Number 4, like I said, so few people are fully equipped. Almost nobody is fully equipped to deal with a crisis just perfectly. Like I started at the beginning, it's a sad but true fact. No matter how much they adore you, no matter how smart and wise they are, everybody's struggling with their own battle and nobody knows exactly what you're going through. So nobody's going to be perfect. Often therapists will come pretty close, and this is why I'm like such a fan of therapy. But a lot of people will do a really, really good job or an adequate job. And you know what? All you need is somebody to just get you through that bump and to get you to the next day or the next moment or the next hour or the next breath. You just need somebody like that. And if that person just 100% failed you or they just can't be there for you, the important thing is to keep knocking. Not every door will be the right door. And that is that's the sort of awkward, uncomfortable truth that I came to you with today. That's not natural for me to share. It's just true. It's just true. But there are a multitude, just endless right doors. And it's just so important to keep knocking. Okay? Keep knocking, because not every door is the right door. And that's kind of, we need to be responsible when we're asking people to reach out for help when they're very, very vulnerable, because plenty of people actually do, and they have a bad experience the first time, and then they stop believing us when we say there's help out there. The truth is, you're going to come up against, a closed door, a locked door, just a door that's out to lunch for a while. There are other doors. And what I recommend is that if everybody is either saturated with your health issues, because it can get very overwhelming for other people, just as it is overwhelming for you, it's great to reach out to online people in groups that have signed up for this. Support groups exist where people can have a lot of empathy, often people who have walked your path before and are on the other side and are ready to give back and help with what they know are there, and they're more than willing and they've signed on for it. People are just not also blindsided, because somebody might be expecting to answer the phone and, just be discussing the latest episode of, what is it that everybody's watching, Game of Thrones, with you. And here you are just having this huge PTSD spiral in the middle of their hectic day. People can be blindsided if we approach them, from our real sort of circle of friends. So there's countless support groups out there where people aren't blindsided. They know exactly what they sign up for when they're in that group, and they're available online. There's endless amounts of support online. And those people are just as real and just as awesome. And often, I have some of my closest friends I met online through groups, support groups or pregnancy groups or whatever. Those are real people. Those are real resources. We're very lucky to live in this age of, online connection in this way. And then remember that this too shall pass. That is what I always want to just sign off everything with, is that if you're in a crisis, keep going. If you're in hell, if you're walking through hell, I'm butchering this beautiful, beautiful quote, but if you're walking through hell, keep walking, keep going. If you're going through hell, keep going, because nothing is worse than setting up camp there or deciding this is it. And I can speak so much to that, because this happens to me constantly, and the setbacks from PTSD, especially when you've been doing well for a long time, are devastating, and they are actually very dangerous as well, because, like I said, the more times you circle the drain, the closer you feel like you're getting into, getting sucked down. It's a terrible feeling to have to, revisit these things over and over. But as many times as I have, and as hopeless as I felt, and this happened to me really recently within the last week, and I will in my next podcast really address that. The next day, the next hour, the next week or month can look entirely different, so different. So please do not listen to the lie that this is it. If you're feeling isolated and your friends or your loved ones didn't come through in the way that you wished or needed them to, you can be in such a dark place. And if all else fails, please just remember that I am promising you that everything passes, good and bad, mostly bad. It will get better. It gets better. Please believe me. I am I need to be reminded of this constantly myself. I've gone through this, but just hold on, because the next day will come, the next hour will come, the next month and week, year, and you will be happy that you kept going. Okay? There are many doors out there. Remember to ask for help. It is never the wrong idea. It is always the right instinct to ask for help. Be strategic and gosh, it sounds weird to say be careful about your vulnerability, but take care, okay? And those are some great sort of methods that I've recently started to employ, and they've been very, very helpful to me. You are loved, and everything is going to be okay. And thank you so much for tuning in. I will talk to you soon. Mwah.